In the age when stars still whispered to one another across the dark, there came a wanderer from the edge of the Vega system. Their vessel, built from the bones of comets and the dreams of dust, drifted too close to a forgotten moon, one that hid behind veils of silver mist and silence. No chart marked its name. No traveler spoke of it. It was the moon the stars themselves had chosen to forget. The wanderer's ship trembled as storms of crystal fire tore through the thin skies. The engines wailed like spirits refusing death. Lightning that glowed blue and gold struck the hull, and the vessel spiraled downward, swallowed whole by the silence below. The last thing the wanderer saw before the crash was the sea, vast, frozen, glowing faintly beneath layers of glass-like ice. When the dust settled and the echoes of the fall faded, the wanderer awoke amidst wreckage and snow. The air was still. The stars above were motionless, as though holding their breath. Around them lay a plain of frozen waves, an ocean paused in time. The surface shone faintly, not with reflection, but with memory. The wanderer rose, suit cracked and visor dimmed, and looked upon that endless mirror. Beneath the ice moved shadows, vast and slow like dreams trapped beneath glass. The silence pressed against their ears until it seemed to hum. It was not empty silence. It was listening. With slow steps, they began to walk across the frozen sea. Each footfall echoed too long, returning distorted, as if the ice itself repeated their steps. The horizon shimmered faintly, and in the distance stood a single tower, or perhaps the illusion of one, rising like a spear from the frozen plain. Toward it, the wanderer walked, though they could not say why. Hours passed, or perhaps days, for time lost its measure beneath the silver sky. The tower grew nearer, revealing its form, a structure of crystal and metal entwined, half buried in frost. Its base was carved with symbols that pulsed faintly when touched, each one resonating with a tone deeper than sound. The wanderer pressed a trembling hand to the surface, and the tower shivered in response. Then came a voice, soft yet vast, neither male nor female, as old as silence itself. "You awaken the memory of the sea," it said. The wanderer turned, and from the mist stepped a figure of light and metal, the Caretaker. Their form was neither human nor machine, but something between, carved by patience and purpose. The Caretaker regarded the wanderer with eyes of molten silver. "Few come here," they said. "Fewer still survive. You have fallen through silence itself." The wanderer, their breath shallow and words uncertain, asked, "Where am I?" The Caretaker raised their gaze toward the pale horizon. "This is the moon of the silent sea," they replied. Once it sang, once it remembered every voice that touched its waters, but now it dreams in frost. Their tone was filled with reverence and sorrow. They gestured for the wanderer to follow, leading them to a fissure in the ice where faint light glowed below. "The heart of the moon lies beneath," said the Caretaker. "If you would live, you must walk into its memory." The wanderer hesitated, then followed without another word, drawn by curiosity as much as need. They descended into the depths, where the air turned warm and the walls of ice glowed from within. The deeper they went, the more the silence began to shift, not breaking, but transforming into whispers too low for words. The path opened into a vast cavern where pillars of frozen water reached toward a ceiling of light. At the center of that sacred space stood the core, a sphere of liquid brightness suspended in the air, pulsing like the heartbeat of a slumbering god. The Caretaker bowed before it. "Here sleeps the memory of the sea," they said. "It has waited longer than suns have burned." The wanderer felt the hum of the core deep within their chest. Drawn forward, they reached out and touched its surface. At once, visions flooded their mind. Endless oceans filled with light, ships that sailed between stars, laughter, music, and the quiet peace of worlds long gone. Then came fire, collapse, and silence. The sea's memory had been sealed by its own sorrow. When the wanderer fell back, trembling, the Caretaker spoke again. "It knows you now. It feels your courage. The core remembers the moment you chose to fall rather than flee." The wanderer could not answer, for tears filled their eyes, not of sadness but of awe. Above them, the walls of the cavern trembled. Hairline cracks began to snake through the ice, and light poured through them like veins awakening. The Caretaker's gaze turned upward, voice low and solemn. "The sea stirs. The silence begins to break." The wanderer looked upon the core, still glowing brighter with each pulse, and felt the ground shift beneath their feet. The frozen sea was no longer still. Something ancient was breathing again, and thus began the awakening of the silent sea. The cracks widened until they formed rivers of light, threading through the ice like molten veins of memory. A low, resonant hum rose from the depths, ancient and steady, like the slow heartbeat of the moon itself. The caretaker turned their shining eyes toward the ceiling, whispering words that trembled with both awe and dread. The silent sea wakes. It remembers what was taken. The wanderer stood beside them, shielding their face from the rising glow. Each pulse of light grew stronger, painting the cavern walls in silver and gold. The floor rippled faintly, as if the water beneath the ice had begun to stir, remembering what it once was. "What will happen now?" the wanderer asked, voice small against the roaring stillness. The caretaker's gaze never left the light above. "Now," they said softly, "we see what it remembers of us." The cavern shuddered, releasing a sigh of steam and warmth. The frost that had sealed the walls for an age began to melt, and with each drop that fell, echoes awakened. The sea was not just water, it was memory, dreaming of life. The ceiling split apart, revealing the sky from below for the first time in millennia. Streams of silver water cascaded down like threads of light, spilling into the ancient ruins. Faces and forms flickered in each droplet, souls of the sea reliving the worlds they once touched. "The ocean is remembering," the caretaker said, "and memory is never gentle." The wanderer watched as scenes unfolded in the falling mist, ships sailing between suns, beings woven from starlight, and cities of crystal rising and falling again. "What are we to do?" they asked. The caretaker's reply was simple: "We endure. All who witness rebirth must first survive it." A tremor rolled through the chamber, strong enough to knock them both from their footing. From deep below came the groaning voice of something vast and alive. The caretaker pointed to a sloping tunnel of light. "The spire lies ahead. If we reach it before the flood, we may yet speak to the sea before it fully wakes." They ran through the glowing passage, boots striking the wet stone. The air was thick with shimmering mist, alive with quiet whispers. Strange readings filled the wanderer's instruments, shifting gravity, surging warmth, and a pulse that synchronized with their own heartbeat. The moon was no longer a place. It was an awakening being. The tunnel curved upward, its walls etched with glowing symbols. Spirals and constellations wove together like poetry carved in light. "These are maps," murmured the wanderer. The caretaker nodded. "Not of space, but of time. The sea remembers every world it has ever touched. Each line is a story." The wanderer traced one of the luminous spirals. "How old is this place?" The caretaker paused before answering, touching a symbol that pulsed faintly at their hand. "Older than the suns that rise above it. Older than fear, older than hope. The sea forgets much, but never its own ending." Before the wanderer could question further, the ground shook violently. From behind came a deep, cracking sound as the walls split and columns of vapor hissed upward. The caretaker's eyes brightened. "The flood comes sooner than I thought. Hurry." Together they pressed forward, the hum of the core now roaring like a distant tide. The tunnel opened into a vast dome of light where the spire stood, a towering column of crystal and steel reaching from the ground to the fractured heavens above. The spire pulsed faintly, as though listening for a song it had long forgotten. "This is the heart of the moon," said the caretaker, bowing their head. "It holds the sea's last dream." The wanderer approached the spire, the air warm and electric. When their hand brushed its surface, the world changed. Visions swept through their mind, oceans of living light, songs sung by beings whose forms were made of color and sound. Then the storm, a fall of fire, a sky cracking open, and silence swallowing all. The sea had once known joy, then sorrow, then solitude. The wanderer fell to their knees, gasping as the vision faded. "What happened?" they asked. The caretaker's voice was soft. The sea forgot its own name. It could no longer bear its memories, and so it froze itself into silence. The words hung heavy in the air, the spire groaned, and water began to surge from its base in glowing rivers. The chamber shook as the ocean began to rise once more. "It is too soon," warned the caretaker. "The core has awakened faster than I feared." The wanderer turned to flee, but the path they had come through was gone, buried in falling shards of ice. "Here!" cried the caretaker, pointing toward a narrow passage. To the upper terraces they ran together, their shadows twisting in the light. Behind them, the sea's song filled the tunnels, a chorus of countless voices singing as one. It was not rage, it was remembrance. As they climbed, the caretaker paused, listening. "It calls to you," they said to the wanderer. "To me?" the wanderer asked, astonished. "Yes, you touched the core. You reminded it of courage." Their voice was reverent now, as though speaking of a sacred thing. The sea wakes for those who remember what fear once taught them. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern where molten light poured from the ceiling like waterfalls. Waves of brilliance crashed and rolled below, and in their depths swam great shapes of radiance. "Are they alive?" whispered the wanderer. "They are echoes," said the caretaker, "dreams of what the sea once held." One of the shapes rose higher, wings of pure energy stretching across the cavern. It circled in graceful arcs, leaving trails of light behind. "When the sea awakens, the echoes take form again," said the caretaker, "but it needs a voice to guide its memory home." Their eyes turned toward the wanderer. "It calls for you." The sea began to churn violently. A column of light erupted from its center, shattering the ceiling and striking the sky beyond. The force of it threw the wanderer back. Through the breach above, stars shone faintly, veiled in the silver mist of the rising tide. The caretaker reached out, steadying them. "The sea speaks," they said. "You must answer." "I don't understand its language," the wanderer whispered. The caretaker smiled sadly. "It speaks in courage, not words. You already know its tongue." The sea's glow intensified, the echoes moving faster, weaving around the column of light like living constellations. "If this continues, the moon will tear itself apart," said the wanderer. "Then it will be reborn," the caretaker replied. "Every sea must rise before it can become sky again." Their tone was serene, almost joyous. "What must I do?" asked the wanderer, heart-pounding. "Jump," said the caretaker. "Face what you woke." The water reached their feet, humming with life. The wanderer looked once more at the figure beside them. "If I don't return?" they asked. The caretaker's expression softened. "Then you will have gone where the brave belong." The sea's song rose to a crescendo. The wanderer took a single breath and stepped forward. The surface met them not as water, but as memory. The world turned to color and motion. They fell through visions, worlds forming, voices laughing, time bending into light. Then they saw a figure waiting below, standing within the glow. It was themselves, older, calmer, radiant with understanding. As their reflections met, the sea whispered one final phrase: "Courage remembers itself," and the light consumed them whole. In the beginning of the end, there was only light. It swirled like a storm of silver fire, vast and soundless, rising from the deep heart of the moon. From that light came the wanderer, neither falling nor flying, but drifting through the tide of memory itself. Around them, shapes of ancient dreams swam, creatures formed of song and color, fragments of the moon's forgotten soul. The sea's voice filled the air without words, echoing in the wanderer's mind. "Remember me as I was, not as I became." The tone was neither pleading nor proud. It was weary, like an ocean that had dreamed too long. The wanderer reached out, their hand dissolving into radiance as they touched the current of living memory. In that instant, the past unfurled before them like a scroll of light. They saw the birth of the moon, how it once floated as a beacon between worlds, alive and free. Oceans of starlit water stretched across its surface, home to beings of grace and harmony. But as ages passed, the heavens shifted, and the moon's path grew cold. The stars that had sung to it drifted away. Loneliness took root in its heart, and the living waters stilled into silence. Thus the silent sea was born. The wanderer floated deeper, and the light thickened until it felt like a gentle storm. Whispers swirled around them, voices of those long gone, murmuring in languages older than suns. We were the tide, the breath, the song. The wanderer realized they were not in water, but in thought, a vast ocean of consciousness remembering itself. Then, from the far horizon of that light, a shadow began to form. It moved like a veil across the brilliance, vast and ancient. The caretaker's voice echoed faintly in the wanderer's mind. That is the keeper of the depths, the sea's final memory, the guardian of what was lost. The shadow approached, its form shifting like smoke in a dream. It spoke with a voice that trembled the light. Why have you come where even the stars dare not shine? The wanderers steadied themselves and answered softly, Because I heard your song, and no song should end in silence. The shadows stilled, and for the first time the storm quieted. Then you are the echo I once cast into the void, it said. You are what returns. The sea began to pulse brighter. The wanderer felt the memories stirring, cities of crystal beneath sapphire waves, laughter that rippled through the air, and the light of two suns dancing on the water. I see you now, said the shadow, but to awaken fully I must remember pain. Will you bear it with me? The wanderer nodded. Yes, the sea shuddered. Images flashed like lightning, fire-consuming oceans, screams swallowed by the deep, 1,000 worlds ending in silence. The pain tore through the wanderer's mind, but they did not turn away. They remembered the courage they had once given to the sea. They held its grief as one holds a wounded friend. Then, slowly, the storm began to calm. The sea's voice softened, trembling with new strength. You have faced what I could not, it whispered. You have reminded me that sorrow is not the end of song. The light brightened, and the shadow began to dissolve, becoming one with the sea once more. When the brilliance faded, the wanderer stood upon the shore of a reborn world. The ice had melted into shimmering waters that stretched as far as sight could see. The air was warm, filled with the scent of something ancient and alive. Above, the fractured sky had healed, glowing with a pale golden dawn. The caretaker appeared beside them, their form now radiant and whole. You did not fall, they said quietly. You became part of what was meant to live again. The wanderer looked down at their hands, now faintly luminous. The sea responded to their presence, rippling gently as if in greeting. Is it alive? They asked. The caretaker smiled. It always was. It only needed to remember. They stood together at the edge of the tide, watching as the water climbed the cliffs of the moon, turning stone into light. The sea will not remain here, the caretaker said. It will rise into the stars, carrying its memory to other worlds. This moon was only its cradle. The wanderer turned to them. And what of us? The caretaker's eyes reflected the horizon. We remain its witnesses. Every rebirth needs someone to remember it. Only the wind carried their words far across the waves. The sea answered with a low, endless hum, neither sadness nor joy, but peace. As the hours passed, the wanderer saw shapes emerging from the water, towers of silver coral, bridges woven from light, and beings rising like sparks, new children of the sea, born from the song of memory. It's beginning again, whispered the wanderer. Yes, said the caretaker, as it always must. The stars above began to shimmer, and one by one they aligned, forming a great ring of light around the moon. The sea responded, sending spirals of energy into the heavens. It speaks to them, said the caretaker, calling to its lost kin. Soon, the other seas will awaken too. The wanderer felt a deep calm settle over them. Then this is not an ending. No, said the caretaker. This is the moment between breaths, the pause before creation begins anew. Their words lingered like a lullaby. The wanderer gazed across the endless water and saw their reflection ripple and fade into light. Suddenly, a beam of golden fire descended from the stars, touching the sea's surface. The waves lifted, dancing upward as though answering a celestial call. The caretaker's expression turned solemn. It's leaving. The sea will carry its memory to the heart of the universe where forgotten things are made eternal. The wanderer felt tears rise, though they were not of sorrow. Will it remember us? They asked. Always, the caretaker replied. You are part of its story now. As the sea rose, it began to shimmer, transforming into a vast spiral of light that encircled the moon. The ground trembled gently beneath their feet, not in destruction, but in rebirth. The moon's once dead crust bloomed with crystalline growths that pulsed like beating hearts. Streams of silver energy spread across its surface, connecting valleys and peaks in luminous veins. Life was returning. The caretaker bowed their head and whispered a blessing in an ancient tongue. May every silence find its voice again. The wanderer echoed the words, feeling them resonate through the new air. The sea's light answered, glowing brighter in response until the entire moon shone like a second sun. When the radiance finally dimmed, they found themselves standing on solid ground once more, the ocean calm and shimmering beneath a clear sky. Above them, the stars reflected on its surface, creating the illusion of infinity. The caretaker turned to the wanderer and said, It is done. The moon of the silent sea remembers how to dream. The wanderer smiled, though their heart was heavy with awe. Then my journey ends here. But the caretaker shook their head. No journey truly ends. It only changes its name. They pointed to the horizon, where small vessels, shapes of light and metal, floated above the sea. Others will come. They will seek what you found. Tell them the truth, that courage is the first language of all living things." The wanderer nodded. "And what will you do?" "I will remain," said the caretaker, "until the sea calls again." They looked toward the endless horizon. Every age needs its witness. The wind stirred, carrying the soft hum of the sea across the shore. The wanderer stepped closer to the water, feeling its warmth against their skin. It spoke without words, a melody both familiar and vast. "Where will you go?" asked the caretaker. The wanderer looked to the stars, now brighter than ever. "Wherever courage needs to be remembered." The caretaker smiled. "Then the sea will follow." And so it was that the wanderer departed from the moon of the silent sea, their vessel rising gently into the starlit heavens. Behind them, the reborn ocean shimmered like a jewel in the dark, its light spreading outward through the void. In time, the sea's memory touched other worlds, arid planets where no rain had fallen for ages, frozen moons that longed for warmth, and distant suns that had forgotten how to shine. Everywhere it went, it carried the same song. Courage remembers itself. And somewhere beyond the reach of galaxies, where the desert of stars stretches forever, the storyteller's voice still carries that tale. They speak it to travelers resting by unseen fires, to children of starlight and dream, reminding all who listen that silence is never the end. For every sea, no matter how still, will one day rise again. End of The Moon of the Silent Sea